The problem of migrants in the United States remains an extremely complex and constantly changing situation, affecting various regions and requiring many political decisions. Recently, there have been several cases of robberies involving migrants in the United States. In New York, for example, police arrested suspects linked to a major series of robberies, and some of them turned out to be migrants. These arrests have drawn attention to the problems associated with some migrants breaking the law, while most of them seek a better life for their families. 3 people were recently arrested in Detroit, allegedly involved in a series of robberies of expensive houses. These individuals have also been identified as migrants from Chile. These cases highlight the complexity of the migration situation in the United States, where, on the one hand, migrants seek protection and a better life, and on the other hand, there are isolated incidents related to crime. There are several well-known gangs in the United States that include migrants. Some of them include 1. MS-13. Origin. The gang was founded in Los Angeles by migrants from El Salvador. Activity. She is known for her cruelty and involvement in drug trafficking, extortion, and murder. 2. 18th Street Gang. Origin. It originated in Los Angeles among Mexican migrants. Activity. She is involved in drug trafficking, robberies, murders, and extortion. 3. Latin Kings. Origin. One of the oldest Latin American gangs in the United States, founded by Puerto Rican migrants in Chicago. Activity. He conducts criminal activities, including drugs, extortion, and violence. 4. Mexican Mafia. Origin. Founded by Mexican migrants in California prisons. Activity. Controls drug trafficking and organized crime inside and outside prisons. 5. Serenos. Origin. Online street gangs linked to the Mexican Mafia. Activity. They are engaged in drug trafficking, extortion, and violence. These gangs pose a significant threat to public safety and are actively involved in various types of criminal activity throughout the country. The MS-13 gang, also known as Mara Salvatrucha, is a transnational criminal organization composed primarily of individuals of Salvadoran and Central American descent. The gang is known for its involvement in various violent crimes, including murder, robbery, drug trafficking, and racketeering. Here are a few recent cases related to MS-13. Brentwood, New York, MS-13 gang member Alexi Sines pleaded guilty to multiple counts, including the brutal murders of 2 teenage girls, Kayla Cuevas and Nisa Mikens, in 2016. The murders were part of a series of violent acts aimed at raising the status of the gang. Sines also confessed to participating in other murders, attempted murders, and arson. Queens, New York. In February 2024, MS-13 leader Melvi Amador Rios was sentenced to 35 years in prison on racketeering charges, including the murder of 16-year-old Julio Vasquez in Alley Pond Park. This case highlighted the gang's brutal methods of coercion and its use of violence to maintain control. Maryland. Kevin Alexander Castillo Calderon, a member of MS-13, was sentenced to 26 years in federal prison for participating in a racketeering conspiracy that included murder. This case demonstrates the wide reach of MS-13 and their involvement in serious criminal activity in different states. MS-13 continues to be the focus of law enforcement attention because of the violent crimes they commit and the threat they pose to communities across the United States. The FBI and local authorities are actively working to eliminate these criminal enterprises and bring their participants to justice. The 18th Street Gang, also known as Barrio 18, has been involved in numerous criminal activities throughout the United States, including recent high-profile cases of robbery and violence. Indictments in Washington, D.C. An 11-count indictment charges 12 members of the 18th Street Gang with a series of violent crimes, including robbery, kidnapping, and murder. These members operated in various locations, including the District of Columbia, Maryland, Virginia, and Delaware. The indictment detailed the gang's involvement in armed robberies, drug trafficking, and violence against competitors and suspected informants. Racketeering and murder charges. 6 members of the 18th Street Gang were convicted on charges of racketeering, murder, and other violent crimes. Among those convicted was Jackson Madrid Flores, who was involved in the attempted robbery and shooting in Columbia Heights, D.C. This verdict dealt a significant blow to the gang's activities in several states. Murders in Queens and Kingston. Yankee Misael Cruz Mateo, a gang member, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit racketeering and 2 murders. These murders, including the brutal murder of Jonathan Figueroa, were linked to the gang's internal policies and deterrence tactics against cooperation with law enforcement agencies. The gang used these violent acts to sow fear and maintain control over their territory. The 18th Street Gang remains a serious threat due to its organized structure and violent methods of coercion. Law enforcement agencies continue to fight the gang through coordinated efforts involving local, state, and federal agencies to curb its influence and criminal activities. The Latin Kings, an infamous street gang, has recently been involved in several criminal acts throughout the United States, including robberies and other violent crimes. Here are some notable cases. The debacle in New York. In December 2019, an indictment was released in which 17 high-ranking members of the Latin Kings were charged with various crimes, including racketeering, drug trafficking, and robberies in Manhattan and the Bronx. These arrests were part of a significant law enforcement effort to curb gang activity in the area. Operation Dethronement, a major operation in Massachusetts, known as Operation Dethronement, has led to the indictment of dozens of Latin Kings leaders. This multi-year investigation included the seizure of firearms, cash, drugs, and property. The authorities suppressed the activities of a network engaged in drug distribution and violence, as a result of which high-ranking members of the network, such as Michael Secatelli, also known as King Merlin, were arrested. The gang was known for using real estate in New Bedford, Massachusetts, to produce music videos in which they bragged about their criminal exploits. The verdict of Diego Mateo. In June 2023, Diego Mateo, a founding member of the New York gang the Latin Kings, was sentenced to 27 years in prison. Under Mateo's leadership, the Black Mafia has grown into the largest and most violent Latin American group in New York, engaged in large-scale drug trafficking and acts of violence, including robberies and shootings. These incidents demonstrate the ongoing efforts of law enforcement agencies to identify and suppress the activities of the Latin Kings, aimed at limiting their influence and reducing related violence and criminal activity. In recent months, a record number of clashes with migrants have been recorded at the U.S.-Mexico border. In December 2023 alone, there were almost 102,000 meetings with family members, reflecting a significant increase over the previous year. This surge includes not only immigrants from Mexico and Central America, but also a growing number of migrants from countries such as Venezuela and China. The Biden administration is actively considering new executive measures to resolve the migration crisis. The proposals include changes to asylum standards and the introduction of stricter entry rules. These potential changes are aimed at solving the problem of the large number of migrants arriving at the border and simplifying the asylum process by applying the prohibitions established by law at earlier stages of the procedure. This would speed up the removal of persons posing a security threat. Chicago is facing its own challenges with the migration crisis as it prepares to host the Democratic National Convention in 2024. The city accepts buses with migrants, mostly from Texas, which has prompted local authorities to plan the construction of temporary shelters and other accommodation facilities to cope with the influx. This situation is further complicated by the need to ensure safety and sufficient resources as winter approaches. In general, the situation with migrants in the United States is dynamic, and political discussions continue, which have a significant impact on border states and cities receiving large numbers of migrants. The federal government continues to look for solutions to manage the flow and provide the necessary support to the affected areas.